So I'm here with Ben Lesh of Netflix, who is one of our esteemed React Rally speakers. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ben Lesh, as he said. I am a senior software engineer here at Netflix, and I'm also the project lead on RxJS 5, which is a redevelopment of RxJS from the ground up.
Of RxJS 4, right?
Yeah, well, it
It's
was actually
one
RxJS
more.
2 when I started. Yeah, when I started, then there was a couple major version releases, and yeah.
Cool. Um, how did you end up at Netflix? Where were you before that?
I was at a company called Ascent, which was formerly McKesson Automation, and that was in Pittsburgh. And what happened was Netflix was working on several Angular apps. And there was a period where if you looked for an answer on Stack Overflow related to Angular, that my name would come up a lot. So, and that was primarily because back when I started doing any sort of framework related development, I used Angular and there was no real documentation. So at that point in time, so I took it upon myself to answer other people's questions in order to learn more about it. So,
And also to make the number go up.
that was a side effect. Honestly, that was really a side effect. And then I started to care when it got to about 8,000, and then because I wanted to get to 10,000, and then I got to 10,000, I kind of quit doing anything with it, and since then it's just kept going because it's it just sits there and collects points, I guess.
Yeah, it's compound interest
Right.
of Stack Overflow points. Cool. So RxJS is the technology that, to me as an outsider, seems like they have the most passionate users. I'd say is a nice way to describe it. What is it about it that makes the people that like it just like so in love with it?
Well, we hand out aphrodisiacs at the club,
Okay.
at the cult meetings.
Yeah, the
So,
RxJS club,
so it's
the
more of a
physical
cult than a club.
location. Oh, okay.
Um,
Club is what you tell people their first time there, and then the second time,
yeah, sure. It's just
you
a
reveal
club.
the
Come on
truth.
in. No, it's just punch. No, it's the thing I think that people like about RxJS is it. It's a different way of thinking about programming, and it's one of those things that once it clicks, I think it's kind of addictive for people because you're building everything with observables and these operators, and that means that everything that you're doing has a similar shape on each side. And it's kind of like clicking Lego pieces together in order to, get the entire data flow of your application going through. And as long as you adhere to a few simple rules, you can do some pretty powerful stuff with it. So I think that it's that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing something really cool. That people probably get that with JSX a couple times. Like, oh, look at this! I can map an array into JSX, and it's like exciting for people, and they get that that rush out of learning to compose things that way. And I think RxJS has a similar attraction in that way.
It's uh, it's a pretty old idea, right? I mean, aren't the roots of Rx go way back, and then the roots of the ideas behind it go back even further, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, the ideas I think stem from papers that are older than I've been in software development, which is a long time. But the Rx originated with Rx.net in some papers, I believe, by Meyer at Microsoft. And interestingly enough, RxJS originated as part of Microsoft's Project Volta, which was, hey, let's make it so we can compile C# to JavaScript. And in order to do that, they wanted to support all of the common libraries that were used in .NET. So they ported Rx.net, and that became RxJS. And then, of course, Project Volta kind of fell off the map, as far as I'm aware. But RxJS still exists. So that's kind of where it came from.
And Eric Meyer has done like everything basically, right? He didn't he do C Sharp? Isn't he the creator of it?
Yeah. He's a member of the team that created it for C Sharp. Yes.
He's a famous computer person.
Yes, he's a famous computer person. He's I would guess he would be like the godfather of this sort of thing.
That's an interesting image. Just him in his mansion surrounded by, I don't know, armed guards or whatever.
Well, I don't know if he's not really the mansion sort. Every time I see him, he's wearing a tie-dye and sandals. So
yeah, that's his Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Just like a really nice tent. Maybe that's what he lives in.
Maybe.
So, can you give us a little bit? I don't want to make you give away your secret sauce, but can you give us a little bit of an idea of what you're going to be talking about at React Rally? I mean, there's some hints have been dropped already. I assume. You can pick up. It's related to RxJS.
So I go around. I do a lot of talks on RxJS, and whenever I do these talks at meetups, or especially meetups, because meetups, like, people ask questions afterwards, and the question I always get is, what is, and this is even at like Angular meetups, I've been asked this, what's the difference between RxJS and Redux? And like, why would I use Redux if I have RxJS? And it's usually from people that are big fans of Rx, and they're waiting for me to just, I don't know, tear Redux a new one, or like, you don't need that. You can do that in 2 lines of Redux. But basically at Netflix on my team, we've developed some methodologies, myself and Jay Phelps, for using RxJS and Redux together. So that's what I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we use them together, why we use them together, and it's powerful stuff. It's pretty good.
They have many of the same letters in their names, so I imagine that makes it easier for them to work together as well.
Yes, that helps. Also, I really like ducks, so that's also a really good meshing point.
Yeah, that seems like it would make it easier.
If like a development lead from one library likes ducks a lot, and yours has named ducks in it, then you're good.
Cool. Well, it sounds exciting. I think this is one of those ideas that at least I have heard about a lot, but have never really understood. I'm just like very aware that it's a thing people are talking about, but I'm not a member of the cult yet.
Sure.
So I'm excited to get a little sneak peek of what the cult is like. I think it'll be a great talk. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. There is debates even today on Twitter about this very same thing. So
the RX cult, you mean?
RX versus Redux, like why?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
well,
I think there's a few people that are unhappy that I'm not just like RX all the things. But well, it's okay. I'm going to tell them it's okay. So hopefully my talk makes them feel better about it.
So you'll be kind of spreading peace and goodwill and building bridges.
That's what I want to do. I like that sort of thing. Actually, one of my most favorite things to do with observable libraries actually is to try to get Interop. So right now, Most.js, which is made by Brian Cavalier, a real smart guy, and Most is a great library, actually has Interop with RxJS. So you can take a Most observable and make an Rx observable out of it, or vice versa.
Oh, I see.
Similarly, you can make a Redux store into an observable just by saying observable from and then passing the store to it.
Oh, cool.
So there's these interop points that I get a huge kick out of, like contributing and adding. Kefir is another one that has that. So another observable library. So
is there
peace and love?
Yeah,
that's the peace and love part. Interop.
Is there some kind of spec for that, or is it just you just talk to the person and make things work together?
Yeah, there is a spec for that. In fact, RxJS 5 is meant to match the ES observable spec by Zen Parsing. It's Kevin Smith and Jafar Hussein, who I work with here at Netflix, are on the TC39, and they're trying to get observable through as a type in JavaScript. And RxJS 5 is written to be as close to that type as possible. So it's, the idea being that if you build things with RxJS 5, and those observables do make it into JavaScript, that alone will offer itself as a sort of interop point. But there's also like a symbol observable method that you can put on any object, similar to like a symbol iterator.
Mm-hmm.
You can make something iterable by adding symbol iterator to it that returns an iterator. This is the same thing, symbol observable, that returns an observable, which is really just any object with a subscribe method that takes an observer. You can add interop that way. So,
that's cool. I feel like I can kind of grasp the concept of observables once you have them, but the how you get them is still pretty fuzzy to me. So that idea of making them out of things that I'm already using is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to make sure that I include some of that in my talk. Usually, most of the time when you're making observables, honestly, there's so many helpers to help you create an observable. You can take an observable of 1, 2, 3, and it makes like this synchronous observable of those numbers. Or you can say observable from some array or observable from a promise and so on. Like generally, you don't have to create them from scratch very often. But if I was to describe an observable in the simplest possible terms, is observables are really just a function. They exist as an object because it's doing some nice things for you, but at the end of the day, they don't do anything until you call subscribe. And when you call subscribe, you give it an observer. And then it calls this function that you have built that gives you a safer version of that observer that's scrubbed with some guarantees. And every time you next something into it, your observable will emit. So of course you could close over over that observer with like an interval or something like that and call next on it, and it'll emit on that interval. So that's basically what an observable is in a nutshell. Is just a function that takes an observer and then returns some sort of cancellation semantic. It's really no more than that. And anything you can imagine doing inside of a function that takes an observer and returns a cancellation semantic, you can do with an observable. So it's pretty broad in that way. You can do an awful lot of stuff with it, which is why I think people are so excited about it.
Sure. It sounds like there's some similarities, at least from the outside, to the way that streams in Node work. Are there any similarities or interop between those, or are they pretty different concepts still?
I don't think that. I know that RX5 doesn't have like a from Node stream, but you certainly could consume a Node stream with Rx or an observable. But I mean, there's similarities, and there are some similarities to like a promise too. So like a promise is one value that happens asynchronously, where an observable is n values that happen asynchronously. So instead of just having a success and a then, you have this next, then, and complete kind of thing, because you need a notification to know when it's done. So multiple successes and then an error if there's a problem, and then a complete handler to tell you when the whole thing's complete. So really, it's basically an iterable pulled inside out. So if you think about an iterable, you say, give me an iterator, and then you call next on the iterator, and it'll either synchronously throw, or you get a result back, and that result tells you whether it's complete or what the next value is. So there's like 3 channels there. So you take the iterator and you pull it inside out by saying, okay, well, instead of having a next that I call to get a result, I'm going to, with a value in it, I'm going to actually have a next that I give the value to. And then, instead of getting the error synchronously, like when I call next, instead of pulling to see if I have the error, I can have the error pushed at me. So I'll just have another function that takes an error. And then finally, I have like a complete method that gets called to tell me when it's complete, because I don't need to pull an iteration result anymore. Because I can have it pushed at me now. So observable is like an iterator that pushes at you, or an iterable that pushes at you instead of you having to pull values from it.
Sure.
And what that means is you have a set of things. And when you have a set of things, you can filter it, you can map it, you can reduce it, you can do all sorts of other interesting things because it's temporal in nature. Like you can buffer for a specific amount of time. And that means you have all of these operators that you can use to do some pretty complicated and interesting things.
Yeah, the operating on things over time, to me, that was what I kind of understood as the core value of observables. You get some stream of stuff that you can transform or combine or manipulate in some ways, in some pretty interesting ways that are hard to do in other technologies.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear more about it. Thank you for your time, Ben. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm really pumped to be going to React Rally. So it's going to be awesome.
We'll see you there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.